all night long. Fancy helping some faces, young and old, to warm the hearts when it's snowing and it's cold. You're gonna have to find a crew, it can't be anyone. They'll have to be there by your side and do what must be done. So go, man, you know that you have it night through day. The pain you will feel it to bring it on with the Archie County Band. Doubts come and some may never die. So I'll ask myself, should I stop before I try? No way, man, mistake, it has been said. I'm all in, so there's nothing I'll regret. But time is ticking and there's so much that's going through my mind. Will I make it? Yes, I will. Our spirits are entwined. So let's get this show on the road. I'm here, I'll stay and I'll carry the load to bring it on with the Archie County Band. But hold on a second now, I'm starting to feel the strain. Was it a bicycle? What is wrong with my brain? Is it the end of me? No, I must still believe. So I'm still alive, you see. Heck yeah, now I'm on my way. But let's stay focused, there's still a job in hand that we must do. Cameras start to click, we know what create is something new. So go, Marty and Sarah and Mark and Matt, Owen, Smitty, McGrilly and Jay Good afternoon, folks. You are very welcome to Bandido Talks. Well, here we've made it to Monday. It's the start of a new week. Start of a new week. That means there are going to be new live shows from the Bandido. Of course, we have made a little minor adjustment. You may have already noticed it. We're going to go Monday to Wednesday this week. We're going to go back to our 3 live shows, keep it to 3. Every now and again, we might do a little special show on a Thursday. Every now and again. But you're definitely going to get, from Monday right the way through to Wednesday, we will have our 3 live shows here on YouTube. And if that is not enough for you, remember folks, we are always over on Rumble. We do 3 live shows over on Rumble as well. So you have 6 live shows throughout the week. What more could a man or woman ask for when it comes to Bandido Talks? Look at all of that live content. And as I said, or as I have said, every now and again, we'll maybe do a little show on a Thursday, just to keep you all on your toes. But of course, we get to Monday today, and we've got a really good show for you. It's going to be based around a story in the boxing world. Now, I know some of you may not be fans of sport. You may be thinking, what is the point in sticking with the Bandido for this show? Well, folks, you don't have to be into boxing. You don't need to be into sports. This isn't going to be an analysis of the specific boxer in question. It's not going to be an analysis of the promotional outfits involved. It's nothing to do with that, really. We are going to use this story, as always, folks, to extract our lessons. It's the lessons that we are after. The story is just the vehicle that leads us towards the lessons. And so you don't need to be a boxing fanatic or even a sports fanatic to get value out of the show. But it is based around this boxing story. Have any of you seen this story? It's a super interesting one. And it fits in beautifully to what we talk about here on Bandido Talks. It's the perfect example of one of the core things that we talk about. This idea of theatricality, drama. Theatricality and drama. These are excellent tools that can be used upon the uninitiated. Are you uninitiated or are you initiated? Because that's a question you're going to have to ask yourself by the time we get to the end of our show. Are you initiated or are you uninitiated? Because if you are uninitiated, well, I'm afraid to inform you that when people use the strategy of theatricality or drama, you are primed to be manipulated. And when you can be manipulated, you can be exploited. Your time can be exploited, your attention can be exploited, your energy can be exploited, and of course, other resources, such as money, can be exploited. So this story, folks, it's a really good one. And it's around Matchroom Boxing. Now, I have a little AI summary of this particular story, just to make sure that you understand the nuts and bolts of what it is that we're going to talk about. But before I get into that, it really is, I just want to give you a little taster here. It's to do with Matchroom Boxing. It's to do with this promotional boxing outfit that we call Matchroom Boxing. They are a promotional organization. They take fighters and they promote them. That's what the job of Matchroom Boxing is. It's to take fighters and promote them. Get their name out there. Get the global public to become aware of who they are. Get the global public to become interested in them, not just as fighters, but interested in their story. And also, get them the biggest fights possible.
Because if the promotional outfit can get the fighter the biggest fights possible, not only does the fighter benefit, but you guessed it, the promotional outfit or organization also benefits. So Matchroom Boxing is a promotional organization. They take fighters who have potential and they invest in the fighter. They invest time and resources into the fighter, get the fighter's name out there, get people aware of who the fighter is, and get the fighter the big fights that are going to put them ultimately on the global stage, and of course put the promotional outfit on the global stage. So we have Matchroom Boxing, and recently in the last few days, Matchroom Boxing, this promotional organization, they lost one of their biggest fighters to another promotional outfit. Ooh. Those ones tend to sting, don't they? You have one fighter as part of your stable, and then that fighter, unannounced, leaves and goes to one of your competitors. This can be a tough one to handle if you are the promoter. And of course, we're going to talk about the CEO of Matchroom Boxing, Eddie Hearn. We are going to talk about the fighter in question who has left Eddie Hearn's Matchroom Boxing, Conor Benn. And then we are going to talk about the competitor to whom Conor Benn has now went. Zufra Boxing. I think that's what they're called, Zufra Boxing. The promoter at Zufra Boxing is Dana White, who you may know from the MMA world, the mixed martial arts world. So that's just the nuts, I'm saying the nuts and bolts. We're going to get into it here with this summary, but that's a very brief summary. We have Matchroom Boxing. Matchroom Boxing used to have this fighter, Conor Benn, as part of their stable. Conor Benn is one of the up-and-coming welterweights in the world of boxing. He's a big name now. He's had a few big fights in the last year. There's a lot of controversy surrounding Conor Benn. And so a lot of people talk about him. He's a big name now. He's becoming a big name in boxing circles. And so Conor Benn used to be with Eddie Hearn's Matchroom Boxing. But Conor Benn decided to leave in the last few days. A shock announcement. And he has not just left Eddie Hearn's Matchroom Boxing. Remember, Conor Benn has been signed with Matchroom for all of his career, for the last, whatever it was, 10 years or something. And now he leaves to one of Eddie Hearn's competitors, Zufra Boxing. The promoter over there is Dana White. A very interesting story, folks. And we're going to get into this. We're going to look at this whole thing. We're going to look and see, what can we learn from this? Here we have Eddie Hearn has shown Conor Benn a lot of loyalty. Matchroom Boxing, whose CEO is Eddie Hearn, has shown Conor Benn, this welterweight fighter, a lot of loyalty. Conor Benn, of course, was caught up in a drugs scandal a few years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. Matchroom stuck right behind, was right there beside Conor Benn, down in the trenches. When everyone was criticizing Conor Benn, Matchroom was there, supporting Conor Benn, backing him up, when everybody else was doubting him. And so it looked as if it would be fair to say that there was this bond of loyalty between Matchroom Boxing with Eddie Hearn and Conor Benn. It looked like they were loyal to one another. Matchroom has had Conor Benn for a decade. Matchroom supported Conor Benn when he was going through all of these, let's just say, difficult moments when it came to his accusation of taking drugs. And so, all of a sudden now, it seems like all of that loyalty that Matchroom showed Conor Benn counted for nothing. Conor Benn has said, well, you know what? There's this deal over here with Zufra Boxing, and I'm going to get £15 million for my next fight. It's an offer that's too good to refuse. So I'm going to ditch Matchroom and Eddie, who's had my back for the last 10 years, and specifically who has had my back for the last 2 or 3 very turbulent years since I was going through this drugs scandal where I, Conor Benn, claimed to be innocent. Matchroom had my back, even though that was my history with Matchroom. There's £15 million over here with one of Matchroom and Eddie Hearn's competitors. Oh well, Eddie, sorry, all of that loyalty that you've shown to me doesn't really count for anything. I'm going to go over to Zufra Boxing and sign with one of your competitors. That's the way the story is being interpreted throughout common media. But of course, folks, here on Bandido Talks, that is not how we are going to interpret this particular story. Oh no, because when we are talking about boxing, as we are going to discover throughout the episode, what makes boxing great is, you guessed it, controversy, drama. This is what makes boxing great. When I say great, what I mean specifically by that is, this is what makes boxing so attractive compared to all other sports, pretty much. All other sports, everyone is very, kind and stable, and they show good sportsmanship, and there's no insults being thrown. Everybody's very calm throughout most other sports. It's just all about the sport for most other sports. But you see, in boxing, controversy sells. The drama is what makes the sport great. The drama is what captures people's attention and oftentimes captures their resources, i.e. their money. And so, while I understand the current narrative with this story is very much one of loyalty, everybody's talking about this story from the perspective of loyalty. In other words, everybody's saying, oh, well, Conor Benn is a very disloyal person. He has left Matchroom and Eddie Hearn, even though Matchroom and Eddie Hearn have had Conor Benn's back throughout his entire career, and specifically in the last few years, as Conor Benn was going through this big drugs scandal. When everyone was criticising Conor Benn, when everyone was leaving Conor Benn out to hang and dry, Matchroom were there, solid as a rock, supporting their man. And now Conor Benn just leaves. He goes to one of Matchroom's biggest upcoming competitors. And everybody's looking at this from the perspective of loyalty. Conor Benn has not been loyal. Loyalty counts for nothing. Eddie's saying it's like a, quote, dagger through the heart. That's not the angle that we are going to analyse this particular story, or through which we are going to analyse this particular story. Oh no! We're going to come at this through a slightly different, or from a slightly different angle. But before we do that, folks, a little bit of housekeeping. I would encourage you, of course, to like the live stream. Give us a thumbs up if you like what it is that we're doing here on the show. Of course, if you are joining us live, it goes without saying, get down into the live chat, leave your insights, leave your comments. We will get to any live chat comments at the end of the show, if we have any. Of course, if you are watching this live event after it has concluded, get down into the comments section. Let me know what you thought about everything that we will talk about. And then finally, folks, like I've already said, if you like in general what we do here at Bandido Talks, we are live here Monday to Wednesday, here on YouTube, 5 p.m. Irish time. Feel free to subscribe to the channel here on YouTube, Bandido Talks, Monday to Wednesday, 5 p.m. Irish time. If 3 live shows is not enough for you folks, because some of you, as I've said, might say 3 live shows. You're shafting us, Mr. Bandido. This is a disgrace. Well, look, if 3 live shows is not enough for you folk, then just use the scrolling black banner below and you will be able to direct yourself over to Rumble. The Bandido also is live over on Rumble. He does 3 separate live shows, Monday to Wednesday. He's on at 6 p.m. Irish time over on Rumble. Whenever I finish here on YouTube, I'll head straight over to Rumble. So you have a new live show every Monday, every Tuesday, every Wednesday over on Rumble. So you actually have 6 live shows. So subscribe here on YouTube, Bandido Talks, use the scrolling black banner, head over to Rumble after this live stream. Subscribe to Bandido Talks over on Rumble. You will be notified of all of our upcoming live content, all of our video uploads. Keep you in the loop, folks. We don't want you missing out on all of those lessons. And so anyway, with all of that out of the road, folks, let us get into this afternoon's show. Let us truly get into it. Okay, so first things first. I've sort of explained the nuts and bolts. I've already kind of explained it. But I'm going to get a little AI summary of this story, just so that you can hear it in its entirety. You'll be able to get fully grounded, understand what has happened, because I understand that you folk may not be boxing enthusiasts. The Bandido has to account for this when he's doing his shows. And so we're going to read out this little AI summary. Let's have a look at this. And just make sure that we understand what it is that we're dealing with. So let's have a look and see. Let's see what AI has to say about all of this. Okay, so it says the following. This is how the story is summarized. It says the following. British boxing promoter Eddie Hearn and his Matchroom Boxing organisation have suffered a major shock with the abrupt departure of star welterweight Conor Benn, who announced his exit on February the 20th, 2026, after a decade-long partnership that began with Benn's professional debut in 2016. Benn, who is 29 years of age, signed a lucrative one-fight deal reportedly worth $15 million with Dana White's rival promotional outfit, Zuffa Boxing. I think I've been calling it Zufra. The Bandido, look, folks, I don't want to make it out as if I'm an absolute die-hard boxing fan. I'm aware of what's happening in the world of boxing. But you see, when I read Zuffa, I do realise that I have been pronouncing this rival promotional outfit incorrectly. Dana White's going to be on my case. Dana White is going to be sending in comments in the live chat here to Bandido Talk saying, Mr. Bandido, what are you talking about? It's Zuffa Boxing, not Zufra Boxing. The boys will never learn. So anyway, Conor Benn, he has signed with Dana White's rival promotional outfit, Zuffa Boxing, describing the opportunity as one he, quote, simply couldn't refuse in pursuit of the biggest fights possible. Hearn expressed deep devastation, calling the move a, quote, dagger in the heart after learning of it via email from Benn's lawyer, and admitted he, quote, misjudged the character while blaming himself for assuming loyalty would prevail, given Matchroom's unwavering support, including financial loans and standing by Benn through his 2022 failed drugs tests, and the collapsed Chris Eubank Jr. bouts. And this split has ignited fierce debate in the boxing world, with critics labelling it as a betrayal despite Benn's gratitude towards Hearn and Matchroom. As Benn prepares for his Zuffa debut, potentially in the UK by May, the fallout continues to dominate headlines, highlighting the cutthroat nature of modern boxing promotions and leaving Hearn to rally his stable amid the emotional and business blow. Alright, so that's the summary, folks. Let me get my main screen back up here. So, we can clearly see the way the media is portraying this. And in fact, the way Eddie Hearn, interestingly, is portraying this, he's portraying this as a betrayal of loyalty. Okay, so look, I understand, folks. It's very easy to look at this story from that angle. And maybe there has been some betrayal. Maybe there's a degree of betrayal here. We can't fully exclude this from the equation. So I don't want to totally ignore that point of view. However, what you must realize, folks, it goes back to what I was saying in our little introduction. The sport of boxing is somewhat unique among sports because normally when we watch sports, what are we watching? We are basically tuning in to watch extremely skilled and competent people execute the specific motor movements associated with a certain sport. That's why we watch sport to a degree. You know, we watch it because we want to see these supremely talented individuals execute upon things that we ourselves couldn't do. There's an attraction to watching that. There's an attraction to watching highly skilled individuals. Now, when we watch sport, sometimes we have rivalries. So in the world of soccer, we have Manchester United and Real Madrid and Barcelona, Bayern Munich. You know, we have all these different teams, and there are rivalries between the teams. That is true. However, what I would say is that among all sports, boxing is a little unique because not only is it about the rivalry per se of the two people involved, and not only is it about the raw skill and ability on display, but within the world of boxing, one of the big USPs of boxing, one of these, we could say, the unique selling point of boxing, is that you have this combat sport. All of these other sports, nobody is really kicking the shit out of one another. All of these other sports, you know, you have soccer, you kick a little ball around, you play tennis, you know, you hold this tennis racket, you hit the ball over the net. You look at athletics, you know, people are running the 200 meters, the 100 meters, they're throwing a shot put, throwing a javelin. Look at all the sports, folks. Most of them involve, yes, a high degree of skill, but no one is really kicking the shit out of one another. That's sort of unique to boxing. Now, I know we have MMA as well, and some other combat sports, but boxing really, in general, it holds this sort of unique position within the world of sport because you have this very direct combative element. People are literally going in there to knock the shit out of one another. Now, that's interesting in its own right, but there's another unique thing about boxing, and it's why I go back to this USP. One of the unique things about boxing is that it's not just good enough to knock the shit out of one another. You will notice this in the world of boxing. You could have two elite fighters, absolutely supremely talented at the top of their weight division. But you see, if they're really boring, if they don't have much personality, if there isn't a good narrative surrounding the fight, you're going to hear me talk about this word, narrative. If there isn't a good narrative, in other words, if there isn't a good story surrounding the fight, if you've just got two really good fighters who are really talented, people aren't really that interested, even in the world of boxing. Because one of the unique things about boxing is that in this particular sport, more so than any other sport, controversy sells. Controversy is essentially the backbone on which boxing is built. If everybody was just super kind to one another, if everyone was very humble, if everyone just sat down at the press conference, went on to autopilot, talked from a script, if everybody was just shaking hands and just get into the ring and essentially have a very honourable boxing fight, if that's how boxing was rolled out to the public, nobody would really be that interested. Because with boxing, we have this thing called controversy. You saw it in the thumbnail, folks. Drama. Theatricality. They are all the same thing when we're talking about boxing in this context. Theatricality, drama, controversy. These are all ways to do what? To capture your attention Folks, you must realize, in the modern world, in 2026, you don't just have 9 channels on the television to choose from. You don't just have 10 stations on the radio. Oh no, you've got YouTube. You've got all of these social media platforms. There is so much content on the internet. There are so many ways in which people could use their time and energy and attention. Because there's so much content that we have at our disposal for free. We don't even have to pay for it. We have all of this free content. And when I say free, I mean free in the sense that we don't have to pay money for it. Now, some people will say it isn't free because you have to give up your data. That's fine. I'm not going to get into all of that. And people will say, well, they are tracking you. When you use these social media platforms, they take their data and they redistribute your data out to other places and they abuse your privacy. Yes, I understand all of that. So some people might make the argument and say, well, social media isn't for free. When I say for free, what I mean is you don't have to pay for it. You can go onto YouTube and you can watch content for free. Most people do it. Now, it's important to realize this, folks, because not only do you have free access to content, but there's a shitload of this content. There's so much stuff, both human-generated content, AI-generated content, and a mixture of the two. From sport to entertainment to politics to fucking pets, you name it. There's so much content on the internet. And so you must look, folks, at this story with Eddie Hearn, Matchroom Boxing, Conor Benn, Zuffa Boxing. You have to look at this from the perspective of attention. These are promotional outfits. Matchroom Boxing is a promotional organization. Zuffa Boxing is a promotional organization. Conor Benn is a boxer. The more people who know about Conor Benn, the more money he makes. The more people who know about Matchroom Boxing and Zuffa Boxing, the more money that organization makes, or those organizations make. How do they make money? They must capture your attention. If you aren't paying attention to them, they aren't making any money. You do realize this, folks. It is extremely important that they find innovative ways to capture your attention. Now, what happens when they capture your attention? Well, now you are more likely to become invested in what? What are you more likely to become invested in if they have captured your attention? You are more likely to become invested in their narrative. These are promotional outfits, folks. They are trying to promote themselves and their fighters. The better they promote themselves and their fighters and the shows that they generate, the more money they make. Because the more they promote themselves and their fighters, the more attention that they capture from the public. And when more attention is captured, there's an increased possibility or probability that that attention is going to be converted into money. Because when you have someone's attention, they are more willing to listen to your narrative. What is a narrative, folks? I've already said. A narrative is nothing other than a story. It's a story that someone's trying to tell you. Why is someone trying to tell you a story? Remember what a promotional outfit is, folks. It's a sales outfit. Eddie Hearn is a salesman. Dana White is a salesman. Conor Benn is a salesman. These are salesmen. And what does a salesman need? He needs your attention. Because once he has your attention, he can then start to spin you a narrative in order to convince you of something. He spins you a narrative, or, to put it another way, he spins you a story. He tells you a story in order to convert your attention into money. How does he do this? Well, he gets your attention. When he has your attention, he spins you the narrative or the story. And if you become invested in the story or the narrative, then you are more likely to do what? You are more likely to pay money for the pay-per-view to watch the fight, or you are more likely to buy a ticket to go over and watch the fight in person. Who do you think benefits from this, folks? The fighter benefits, and the promotional outfit also benefits. Now, it just also happens to turn out, folks. You see, whenever we are talking about narratives and stories, when you have a salesman, which is what a promotional outfit is, a boxing promotional outfit is nothing other than a salesman trying to convince you of something. How do they convince you of something? They sell you a narrative or a story. Now, this narrative and story, what do you think the promoters and the boxers coincidentally inject into the narrative or the story? They take out a big syringe and they stick it into the narrative or the story. And you know what they inject into it? You know what they inject into the narrative of the story? That's right, you guessed it. Controversy. Because it's not just good enough to spin a story oftentimes. There has to be controversy. There has to be drama. Because if the narrative or the story is boring, then Eddie Hearn, Dana White and Conor Benn are going to lose your attention. They are going to lose your attention to some other corner of the internet. Remember what I said, folks. The internet is an extremely competitive place. It's extremely competitive. There is so much content on the internet. In other words, there's so much competition for your attention. Everybody's trying to get your attention. Why? Because once they capture your attention, they can then spin you a narrative or a story. And if they spin the narrative or the story in an effective way, they can get you to invest in them and their narrative. And once you become invested, you dedicate more attention. And it becomes this wonderfully virtuous cycle for the creator of the story or the narrative. Because the more attention you invest, the more you are subjected to their narrative. And so the more likely you are to be convinced. Because you are exposing yourself to their narrative or story. And remember, Eddie Hearn is extremely good at what he does. You may not like Eddie Hearn, or you may like him. I don't know. But what you cannot deny is he is not just one. Eddie Hearn isn't just one of the best boxing promoters on the planet. In other words, he's not one of the best boxing salesmen on the planet. He's one of the best salesmen in sport. Forget about boxing. Eddie Hearn is a master promoter. He's a master salesman. He is brilliant at what he does. You should take note, actually, listening to Eddie Hearn. You don't have to agree with everything he says or everything he does. You don't have to blindly put your faith in him. But you can appreciate his skill at engineering a narrative, at generating a narrative or a story in order to convince you to invest your attention in his promotional outfit and the fighters that he represents. He is a master at capturing attention. That's his job. What do you think a promoter is? A promoter is there to capture the attention of the public and to direct that attention towards the promotional outfit, the show that the promotional outfit is going to put on, and the fighters that are involved in the show. They are there to capture your attention. And Eddie Hearn, along with Dana White as well, they are masters at this. They are master salesmen. They are masters at the art of promoting boxing and combat sports. And believe me when I say, folks, Eddie Hearn and Dana White, they are keenly aware of the importance of a narrative. It is what allows them to sell their product. What do you think their product is? Their product is their fighters. That's the product. They acquire fighters. And then they promote the fighters. They need the population to buy into the fighters. Because when the population believes in the fighter, they do what? They direct time, energy, and attention towards all the content that surrounds the fighter. And the more the population is exposed to the narrative, the more invested they become. And the more likely it is that they are going to part with their resources. In other words, their moolah, also known as money. They will either buy the pay-per-view, they will buy merch, they will buy a ticket to go and watch the bout in person. That's what they do. This is what a boxing promoter does. It captures your attention and then converts it into money. And how do they do that? They create a narrative or a story. I'm using the two interchangeably, narrative or story. And what do the boxing promoters and the boxers inject into the narrative? You guessed it, controversy and drama. There's nothing, folks, in the world of boxing that sells a story or a narrative quite like drama or controversy. In other words, theatricality. And if you are uninitiated and you don't know that this is happening, then you are going to be manipulated into investing into something that you're not aware of, essentially. You don't even know what's being done to you. And this doesn't make Eddie Hearn a bad person. As I've said, I hugely admire Eddie Hearn for the skill that he employs in the art of promoting a boxing fight. Same with Dana White, all of these folk. But Eddie Hearn, I think he's particularly good at this. And so, let's relate this back to our story. Conor Benn leaves Matchroom Boxing. Eddie's out doing his interviews. It's a dagger in the heart. Disloyalty. Loyalty counts for nothing. Conor Benn leaves Eddie Hearn and goes to his competitor, Dana White, with Zuffa Boxing. Do you not sort of see what's happening here, folks? Open your eyes. While all of you are focused on the loyalty angle, you are being sold a narrative, and you don't even realize it. Please realize, folks, this is not accidental. Sure, as I said, I'm not saying that it's completely devoid here. This story isn't completely devoid of this angle of disloyalty. Maybe there's a little bit of that. Who knows? We not really know. But let me tell you what I do know. When it comes to boxing, the boxing promoters and oftentimes the boxers themselves, they are in the business of not just kicking and beating the shit out of one another. They are in the business of selling you a narrative. Why are they in the business of selling you a narrative? Because they need your attention. And how is it that they can make their narrative more effective? Introduce a little controversy. There's nothing builds a narrative quite like controversy or drama. And then what happens when we have controversy and drama? It captures even more attention from the population. People who are just casual boxing fans are now talking about this. And let me ask you this, folks. Do you think that at some stage, Eddie Hearn's Matchroom Boxing is going to be pitted against Dana White's Zuffa Boxing? do you not think at some stage it exists within the realm of possibility that Conor Benn under Dana White is going to face off against a fighter that Eddie Hearn has in the same weight division? Do you not think that there's a small possibility that this might happen? And you see, when this happens, folks, what have we just built? What have Dana White and Eddie Hearn just built? They have built the ultimate narrative. Because when Conor Benn under Zuffa Boxing squares off at some stage in the future, and trust me folks, it's going to happen, Conor Benn under Dana White's Zuffa Boxing will square off against some fighter that Matchroom has in the same weight division. And you see, when that happens, folks, do you think there's going to be a narrative that can be now sold to the public? You're damn right there is. And there will be. The narrative will be Dana White's Zuffa Boxing with Conor Benn, the disloyal piece of shit, faces off against his former promotional ally, Eddie Hearn of Matchroom Boxing. And all of a sudden, we have a narrative. We have a story. And then the shit talk will follow. The controversy will gain momentum like a big dirty avalanche. And then before you know it, people in the population who weren't even interested, they have their attention captured. And once their attention is captured, they are now invested. And once they are invested, that attention can be converted into money. And who benefits? Conor Benn, Eddie Hearn, Matchroom Boxing, Dana White, and Zuffa Boxing. So folks, that is the true angle of attack. This controversy that you are seeing, this quote, example of disloyalty from Conor Benn, this is nothing other than you being sold a narrative. Believe me, folks. Eddie Hearn is a salesman. Dana White is a salesman. Both of these individuals know this very well. They know that they are literally laying the foundations for a future narrative that is going to be spun your direction. And when the time comes for Conor Benn under Dana White's Zuffa Boxing to square off against his old pal Eddie Hearn of Matchroom, when that comes, when that face-off comes, when that battle comes down the line, the groundwork will have already been laid in the last few days here, and the narrative will be essentially locked and loaded and ready to be fired your direction. It's just beautiful. It's beautiful. And what's the lesson from this, folks? The lesson is very simple. Theatricality can be used to deceive you into doing something that you are unaware of. Theatricality and deception are powerful agents to the uninitiated. You will recognize that quote from a very famous movie. And it's true. Theatricality, drama, and controversy. These are tools. These are strategies that are used by boxing promoters, by politicians, by people in ordinary life. Drama, controversy, and theatricality are all used to spin you a narrative in order to get you to believe in something, in order to convince you of something. Now, who knows what the motive could be? Maybe the motive is to convert your attention into money, like Eddie Hearn with Matchroom Boxing and Dana White with Zuffa Boxing. Maybe the theatricality, the drama, the controversy is being used to distract you from something. A la politicians will use this all the time. Politicians will drum up a controversy, plaster it all over the newspapers. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. Just be aware of that, folks. Just don't get deceived by the controversy. Politicians will use this all the time to distract you. Because when you are distracted, you aren't paying attention to something that you should be paying attention to. And so you miss opportunities, and you can end up walking into a big dirty pit that's about to have the dirt shoveled back in on top of you if you're not aware. So controversy and drama and theatricality, folks, they can be used, in other words, to manipulate you. Manipulate you into doing something. That is what it is. These are tools, these are strategies, these are techniques that are used to manipulate you. In the case of Eddie Hearn and Dana White and Conor Benn, they are using this as a way to create a narrative. And they are injecting theatricality, drama, and controversy into this narrative in order to capture your attention, so that your attention can be converted into money for all the relevant parties involved. If you are a politician, and let's say there's a very important opportunity that's literally right over here, all you have to do is look over here. But the politicians, let's say, don't want you to look over here. So what do? They drum up a controversy. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, for example. Drama, theatricality. And instead of you looking over here, you look over here. There's an opportunity over here. All you have to do is turn your head. But you see, you're distracted by the controversy. In other words, in both instances, you are being manipulated. You're like putty. You know, like Play-Doh. You're just being manipulated into the shape and form that the manipulator wants you to persist in. And that's the lesson, folks. The lesson is, when you are online, when you are watching your television, when you are watching content on social media, or when you are reading the fucking newspaper, if you are consuming any sort of content from any of these mediums, radio, whatever it is, if you start to see a lot of drama, controversy, and theatricality, you should be on red alert. That should be your default. Now, I understand there might be a hurricane coming your direction, and so you want to factor that into the equation. Of course, if there's a hurricane coming towards your town and it's going to, blow your house to smithereens, that is drama. That goes into the category of a dramatic thing. And so yes, you do want to pay attention to that. But what I'm saying to you is, in most instances, when you see drama, controversy, or theatricality on social media, in your newspaper, on the television, or through the radio, in general, with a few exceptions like natural disasters, fair enough, but in most instances, when you hear drama or controversy or theatricality, your default should be red alert. That should be your default. Your default should be, okay, there's a good possibility that someone is trying to manipulate me. Now, it may turn out that nobody is manipulating me. It may turn out that there's a hurricane coming towards my town and I need to evacuate the town, or a volcano is going to erupt. Okay, so I understand that there are a select few circumstances whereby the drama is actually legitimate and we need to be paying attention. Okay, but your default should be, someone's trying to manipulate me. That should be your default. And then yes, you do your homework, you do your due diligence, you look at the parties involved, you look at the relative incentives. When we look at Eddie Hearn and Dana White and Conor Benn, does this controversy help them? Ask yourself this question, folks. They are boxing promoters, which means they are salesmen, and boxers are also salesmen. So ask yourself, does controversy sell future fights for both promotional outfits and for all the fighters involved? Answer that question. The answer is yes, it does. And so you can see there's actually an incentive for Eddie Hearn, Conor Benn, Dana White to sell you controversy, because that helps them capture your attention. So you can see the incentive. In other words, they're trying to manipulate you into investing in their promotional outfit, their shows, and their fighters. When you see or hear drama, or you read about drama and controversy, your default, this is the lesson, folks, your default should be, someone is trying to manipulate me. And you should then engage in a very critical analysis of what it is that you are consuming. And you should then come to a conclusion and cross-reference that conclusion to make sure that you're not overlooking something. Because if a volcano is going to erupt and you are living 1 mile away from the volcano, you're going to want to know that information. That isn't anybody trying to manipulate you into leaving your house so that they can rob your house. No, the volcano is going to erupt. You need to leave. But in most instances, folks, controversy, drama, and broad-scaled theatricality is a tool of manipulation. It's a manipulative tool. Content creators will use it to capture your attention. Other people will use it to distract you from something important. When you see drama, controversy, or theatricality, your lesson from this show, folks, from this episode, the lesson is, have your default be red alert. Have your default be looking out for someone who's trying to manipulate you. Someone who's trying to capture your time, your attention, your energy, or your financial resources. You should be on the lookout. And that should lead you to a critical analysis. Look at the relevant parties involved. See if there is an incentive to sell you the controversy. If the incentive isn't there to sell you the controversy, well then this might be legitimate drama. If the people who are selling you the controversy benefit from the controversy, then you should be suspicious. You should be on red alert. You should do your due diligence and your homework to make sure that you don't get manipulated, to make sure that you don't get exploited. And that is how we should look at this entire thing with Eddie Hearn, Conor Benn, and Dana White. Matchroom promotional, or Matchroom Boxing, and Zufra Boxing. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing this correctly. Fuck, who knows? But you get the idea. Don't be putting yourself in a position where you can be manipulated. Because most of you dipshits out there, you don't even know that this is being used on you as a strategy to capture your attention. Once your attention is captured, it can be monetized. Be aware of it, and if you want to continue to buy pay-per-views, if you're an informed customer, that's fine. Nobody's saying that you shouldn't watch boxing, or pay for pay-per-views, or pay for a ticket. That's fine. You're free to use your money and your resources however you wish. But be an informed customer or consumer. Don't be a dipshit. Understand the terms of the agreement. Understand that in the world of boxing, controversy sells. Understand that in the world of boxing, controversy and drama is a critical part of the narrative. And it is the narrative that is being sold to you. Because the narrative is what's going to get you invested. The narrative is what's going to get you to willingly cough up your attention and dedicate it to Eddie Hearn, Conor Benn, and Dana White, instead of dedicating that attention somewhere else on the internet. Be an informed consumer. And be on the lookout. When you see drama and controversy, your default should be, red alert, someone is trying to manipulate me. That's your default. All right, let's have a look at the live chat. I don't think there's anybody in the live chat. I can see the phone out of the corner of my eye. Let's have a look and see. Is there anybody in the live chat? Let me get this set up. It doesn't look like there is. There's nobody in the live chat. Let me get my main screen back up here. The Bandido has been rambling. Well, what I would say though is, for those of you who watch the show on the replay, of course get down into the comments section. Let me know what you thought. Do you agree? Is this a matter of loyalty? Or is Eddie Hearn, Conor Benn and Dana White playing all of you? Because you don't realise that you're being sold a narrative that's been injected full of controversy and drama and theatricality. Let me know down in the comments, folks. Of course, feel free to give the stream a thumbs up, give us a like, and then finally, I would encourage you folks, if you enjoy what you're hearing, subscribe to Bandido Talks here on YouTube. I'm going to head over to Rumble. In the next few minutes, we start our show over on Rumble at 6 p.m. Irish time. So head over to Rumble, use the scrolling black banner below, subscribe here on YouTube, head over to Rumble, subscribe to Bandido Talks over on Rumble. We do different shows, folks. The show that we're going over to do on Rumble now, it's a completely different show. I'll give you the heads up. We're going to talk about the BAFTAs. The BAFTAs, these movie award ceremonies. We're going to talk about that over on Rumble in a few minutes. But folks, that is everything from me. I hope you enjoyed the show. Enjoy the rest of your Monday evening. I will be back here tomorrow at 5 p.m. Irish time, here on YouTube. Until then, folks, enjoy the rest of your day. And it is over and out from the Bandido.